What is going on, my YouTube collectors out there? Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Hopefully everybody is doing fantastic. Everybody is staying safe out there. Probably everybody is already either drunk or hung over by now. This is the long holiday weekend, so that tends to happen. Just stay hydrated. Don't do anything you wouldn't do while you're sober. Let's get straight into it. I'm actually very curious to see what you guys have to say. Let me know in the comment section what are the top 10 DC Multiverse Mcfarlane figures that you guys want to see from him. It's already been a while. It's been, what, about 3 years. He's given us some fantastic figures. He just recently gave us 2 of those mega figs, the Man-Bat, and then he also gave us the Killer Croc from the Arkham series. So 2 fantastic figures. He's doing a great job, but we're collectors. We're demanding. It's just the way that it is. I don't know why. Let's get straight into it. Let's not waste any more saliva and breath here, any more oxygen. Let's start off with number 10. And this is going to be a recurring theme when it comes to a lot of these action figures. Primarily, I feel as if there's a disconnect almost with Mcfarlane or the toy manufacturing biz and the comic book industry, when I feel like they should go hand in hand, especially when there's a new comic book character debut. Today we're going to be talking about Miracle Molly, a very modern character, made her first appearance not too long ago, but it makes you wonder why they don't get on that same page, why they don't release a character that is going to be, and it was a very hot character upon its first appearance in comic book form, and it just seemed like they could have capitalized a little bit more, like they could have gone out and actually manufactured a figure. It would have been mind-blowing to see an action figure be released within the same month, or at least within that same little time period of seeing her first appearance in comic book character, to actually see her in action figure form, especially with Mcfarlane doing the Hole Punchers line now. I think it's very important that they get on the same page. They actually communicate, and maybe we get to see some of these action figures within a few weeks, maybe within a few months, at least within that same little time frame. And I think they would really capitalize, and maybe their revenue and their profit margins wouldn't be so razor thin with these action figures, especially for a lot of these hardcore collectors, people that go to multiple comic book shops because there's limits on these, to try to get multiple copies or to get store exclusives. Now, this isn't necessarily the most expensive first appearance. This kind of cooled off after a little while, and so you can probably get one for about $15 to $20 on eBay, but it's still a fantastic character. She stands on her own. She still is, I know, Batman-centric, but she's a very, very cool character who has, I think, earned her own in the DC universe, and primarily because she is so modern, and because a lot of comic book readers, are going to be very familiar, and she's going to be very fresh in their minds. I think it will attract not only comic book collectors, but also, or primarily comic book collectors, but also those that just love cool plasticky fumes up in their nostrils. So this is a very, very good action figure, and as I mentioned, the Hole Punchers line, this is a great opportunity. Throw in a first appearance or like a new cover for her first appearance in Detective Comic Books, and then include the action figure. You'll get the comic book readers to actually jump in on the line, and some of those that might not even be that interested in the action figure, and then you'll also get the hardcore DC Mcfarlane collectors. Next up on the list for number 9, we actually have yet another modern character that just recently made her appearance and is also very Batman centric. We're going to be looking at Punchline, who is supposed to be a pretty big love interest for the Joker, and she actually, again, is another mainstay that I think has longevity in the DC universe. Whether any of these characters get killed off, we all know nobody stays dead in the DC universe, or actually in comic books in general, for too long. Her first appearance technically is on Batman 92, but she also makes cameos in 89, and then also the Hell Arisen comic book. I believe it's number 3. So all of these comic books definitely have value out there. If you go on eBay, the first prints for a lot of these are very, very high in value. Myself, I actually had to settle for a Hell Arisen third print run, which, obviously the value on that is a little bit lower, but one of those characters, same thing, the comic book that featured her first appearance went up in value drastically. Anything that had her first cover appearance as well. She's been a very, very beloved character by the community. She was introduced in a very good way, and I think it was about time that we got a new character that intertwined or connected directly to the Joker. But this is a great figure again for the DC Mcfarlane, universe, primarily because it's modern, it's something new, it's fresh, it's something that we haven't really seen before from Mcfarlane. He has gotten, action figures or characters directly from the comic books and made action figures. We saw a lot of the DC medals, characters that are actually very, very modern, but we haven't seen anything where it's this close to the first appearance. And I think it's about time. Again, another really cool first appearance. Like I said, she's a very interesting, very unique character, and she definitely separates from herself from Harley Quinn, which is usually the biggest love interest for Joker. So that's going to be our number 9. Up next for number 8, we're actually going to be looking at another Batman character. I'm totally joshing with you guys. No way. We know how to take a break from Batman. Wink, wink, Mcfarlane. That one's thrown at you. But we're actually going to be talking about a Superman character. We're going to be talking Doomsday. He might be like the first, I don't know if this is the correct terminology, but he almost plays off as a stripper in his first appearance because he lands in a green suit, and then I can't remember exactly, but I know his first appearance is in Man of Steel 18, but he's actually wearing his that green suit that he lands in, and then eventually as he fights, as he just starts wrecking people, the suit starts to fall apart, and then he's just left in swimming trunks, as is most of comic book characters. If you go back to look at Hulk, same thing. He's walking around in just ripped up shorts, and it seems like shorts are the only things that withstand transformations. Not t-shirts, none of that, not shoes, only shorts. But this is a great character. We've seen something kind of similar. We saw the Devastator from the DC Metals universe, but he didn't scale right. He was incredibly short and small for the type of figure at the time. McFarlane still wasn't doing the mega figs. And on top of that, he is kind of just a different iteration of Batman, which we've started to see, and I get it. All the waves and bombardments towards McFarlane about how he makes too many Batman DC Multiverse action figures, but I feel like it's perfect. We have the 1000 comic books action, Superman that we got not too long, well, actually quite a while ago. It was one of his first few figures. I own it. It looks fantastic in the display, but he's definitely missing a counterpart. We have gotten a Lex Luthor, and we've gotten a Bizarro, 2 great figures. We also got, I think, Infected Superman, which looks great next to him. But I think it's about time we got another mega fig. McFarlane is really hitting the mega figs pretty hard. If you look at not just within the DC Multiverse, but also in the Spawn line, he's doing great work. They don't have great articulation. They're more really articulated statues. But I think he can really start to flesh out and really give us something unique. And I think with this particular action figure, it would be a surefire hit. For number 7, we have none other than Martha Wayne herself. I know everybody, I'm totally joshing with you guys. Who's asking for a Martha Wayne action figure? Stop it, guys. But for number 7, we actually have somebody, I guess a little bit obscure, not really an obscure character, but an obscure action figure. We're talking a Bruce Wayne action figure. Why not? Why not get a comic book accurate Bruce Wayne? I know we got a Robert Pattinson version, but we need somebody to put in the display. I know so many people out there in the YouTube sphere are using custom fodder to actually put a Bruce Wayne into their display, and they're having to pay through the nose to get whatever, a unmasked Bruce Wayne head sculpt to put it in the display, and then have to find a body mold that fits in. It's very troublesome. McFarlane, I get it. I know he made a stream not too long ago where he complained about some fans asking for really obscure characters or asking for too many female characters. And I get it. He's coming from a business perspective, and it makes a lot of sense because sometimes a lot of the collectors are saying, well, yeah, we want more female characters, but then you go to your local Target and it's nothing but peg warmers for the female characters. So I get it. From his perspective, it makes a lot of sense, but also from the fans' perspective, we're saying, hey, you're doing a lot of obscure characters. I mean, you did just do the Crime Syndicate. You did the DC Metals universe where only true, legit comic book readers will be familiar with the characters. So it comes to reason that it's only logical that we're going to get a Bruce Wayne eventually. Just a comic book. I don't really care if it's Rebirth. I don't really care if it's like even the Dark Knight Returns. I'll be okay with it. Just give us a Bruce Wayne, an unmasked one with like a really fancy suit with his, a nice little bow tie or a regular tie. It doesn't matter. Just give us something like that. I think most of us are clamoring for it. And I get it. It's yet another Batman action figure technically, but it's necessary for the display, guys. Let's be completely honest. For number 6, let's continue with the Superman villains. We're actually going to be looking at not necessarily like the oldest DC character, but also not the newest one. He's kind of smudged somewhere in between there. He actually debuted back in the 70s and was created by the iconic creator Jack Kirby. We're talking Darkseid. I know technically we got one from the DC Cinematic Universe, but we need an iconic comic book accurate Darkseid, one that can actually put his hands behind his back, please. And this is really where McFarlane tends to have a lot of success with these type of figures, because for the most part he struggles when there needs to be a lot of articulation or a ton of accessories. But with this particular character, you don't need any of those. Just as long as you can get a couple of iconic poses from him, you should be good. So I think he could actually have a lot of success with this type of figure. For number 5, we're just going to have an entire wave for this particular spot. We're just going to go Watchmen. Why not? For those of you guys that have followed the universe, we've gotten a lot of great media from them. Not only comic books, but also the show on HBO. But primarily the comic books. I mean, they came back into kind of DC continuity. There was this big storyline where Dr. Manhattan and Superman were supposed to match up. Doomsday Clock was a great comic book run, great series. It was acclaimed all around. And I think it was a great opportunity for them to capitalize on the success for Watchmen. But we all need some of those characters. I mean, we all need Rorschach. We all need a Dr. Manhattan. Maybe not the naked version, but at least a version of him. So for us fans that have been waiting quite a while, I think this is the perfect opportunity for them to actually revisit the Watchmen universe, which technically now is kind of a part of the DC universe as well. Honestly, from now on, I could literally include nothing but Batman villains. I'm going to try to hold back on that. I'm going to try to fight all of my instincts. But for number 4, we're actually going to have another Batman villain. And it's another DC mega fig that I think should be made. We're talking Bane. Primarily the reason why I continue to refer to the mega figs, like I mentioned before, I think it's kind of McFarlane's forte. You need something that's really well sculpted, really well detailed. That's McFarlane. You don't need amazing articulation from these figures. Same thing, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Storm Collectibles did a Bane not too long ago, but we need a Bane based on the comic books for sure. There's Arkham series, iterations of him. There's also other versions, not too long ago there was another video game that was based on the detective comic book series. So all of that aside, we need a comic book based Bane for the display. And like I said, I think he kind of already has some parts and some body molds that he can reuse, primarily from the Last Night on Earth, which was a great wave. We got a Bane. He can easily reuse some of those arms or some of those legs. Easy repaints, easy reuse. Maybe just give us a different head sculpt here and there. And then fix the legs, for goodness sake, McFarlane. You have no idea how many tutorials I had to watch to actually get those big giant tree trunk legs to fit into their proper slots. For our number 3, we're actually going to go modern again. We're going to be looking at Red Eggs. I guess we were going to have to eventually do it. We're going to address Future State. I know it was an absolute mess. I know a lot of awful things came from it, but this is one of those characters that was actually kind of introduced. If I remember correctly, he was a part of like the animated series for the Teen Titans or something like that back in the day, but we finally got to see him in comic book form. He is a really big nemesis of Robin, at least for the foreseeable future. But he's one of those characters that I feel has longevity in the comic book universe still. I think he can find his place, his footing in there. And it definitely did resonate with a lot of people. It was a very, very sought-after first appearance. And it was one of those few characters that I feel is definitely going to survive the Future State, which not many others are going to. I mean, we saw a lot of new characters that were from the Future State that are getting absolutely destroyed by the media and by the critics. So it's only a matter of time that we found at least one character that can survive past, the DC Future State. For number 2, we're actually going to go with Clown Hunter, another James Tynion first appearance character. If I'm not mistaken, he actually appeared in his first run, which was like, what was it, like Batman 96, I believe, right along the time where a lot of these really cool characters were making their first appearances. He came out in 2020 along with, I believe, I'm not sure, don't quote me on it, but Miracle Molly and Punchline were along that same time frame. But he is kind of a vigilante. He follows kind of along the same lines of Batman, although he uses, a few more brutal methods. But he's basically a character that was born from some of the wrongdoings of Joker. He actually killed some of his parents. He killed his parents, and then he eventually started to go after the Joker. He's a very interesting backstory, very good character, and still definitely has a lot of story to be told and definitely a lot of road in front of him. We're going to be doing something similar that we did earlier in the list. We're going to actually be going in for an entire series, kind of how we did with Watchmen. I know it's going to make some people grow white hairs. I know it's going to make some people rip out their hair plugs. But we're actually going to be throwing the Dark Knight trilogy, or I guess the Dark Knight Christopher Nolan trilogy, in the mix here. How exciting, just the prospect of Mcfarlane actually being able to get his hands on the DC Multiverse line. But I think it's even more exciting to think that he can actually turn the pages of history back in time, give us something that makes us reminisce, makes us think of simpler times, and, think of a time when Christopher Nolan had the entire DC cinematic universe in the palm of his hands. Very exciting stuff. We need to see a Mcfarlane, Tom Hardy Bane. We'll eventually obviously get a Christian Bale Batman, also a Heath Ledger. I mean, we've been waiting for a new Heath Ledger figure for quite some time. We've gone, I believe, what was it? Mesco had their hands on it, Mayfex, even SH Figuarts, and obviously Mattel. But I think it's time that Mcfarlane actually gave us his iteration of the Dark Knight trilogy for those of us that are big fans. Not only maybe the best DC comic book based film of all time, but just maybe one of the best trilogy or one of the best comic book series based films of all time, in my personal opinion. Anyways, that is the list, guys. A lot of saliva was spilled, a lot of oxygen was used. My throat is extremely dry. I need a very tall glass of really cold water to just wash this pain down, because it was very difficult to narrow it down to just 10, but there you have it. That's my personal opinion. Let me know in the comment section what you guys think of this list. Let me know what your top 10 are. What other top 10 lists do you guys want to see? Anyways, thank you guys for tuning in. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you.